They called her a disgrace, a liability who cost the Marine Corps its honor and the intelligence community a critical asset. For 3 years, former Gunnery Sergeant Cassidy Viper Keller had been living in self-imposed exile in the Montana mountains at 8,000 feet, dismissed from service after a classified mission went catastrophically wrong in ways the Pentagon preferred never to discuss publicly. When 24 Navy SEALs found themselves surrounded by over 150 international mercenaries and arms dealers in Devil's Backbone Valley, every available sniper was either dead wounded or deployed to conflicts on the other side of the world. That's when someone in a classified command center remembered the disgraced Marine living alone in the wilderness, 70 miles from where American warriors were fighting for their lives against overwhelming odds. What happened next would take exactly 73 minutes and 7 precisely placed shots from positions that military tacticians had deemed impossible to reach, changing everything the Pentagon thought they knew about mountain warfare and the cost of institutional betrayal. Snow began falling before dawn across the Devil's Backbone Mountains, each flake catching the pale moonlight like fragments of shattered glass. Cassidy Keller stood on the wraparound porch of her isolated cabin, steam rising from her coffee mug into the bitter February air. At 29, she possessed the lean, weathered build of someone who had spent years surviving in conditions that broke weaker people. Her auburn hair, now shoulder length and free from military regulations, caught the wind as she scanned the valley below through instincts that 3 years of exile hadn't managed to erase. The cabin sat perched on a granite ledge overlooking Cascade Ridge, Montana, a town so small it barely qualified for inclusion on most maps. Cassidy had chosen this location specifically for its isolation and tactical advantages: 3 escape routes, clear fields of fire in every direction, and enough warning time to disappear if anyone came looking for the disgraced Marine who had once been considered among the Corps' most promising snipers. Her breath formed small clouds as she sipped the strong black coffee, a habit retained from countless pre-dawn missions, in places the Pentagon preferred not to acknowledge publicly. The Barrett M82A1 rifle leaning against the cabin wall remained within arm's reach, though she hadn't fired it at anything more threatening than mountain predators in over 2 years. Some habits died harder than others. The morning ritual had become meditation over the past 3 years. Watch the sunrise. Calculate wind speeds from the movement of pine branches in the valley. Estimate range to distant peaks using nothing but practice observation. The skills remained sharp even when the purpose had been stripped away by men in suits who needed someone to blame for intelligence failures that reached into the highest levels of government. Arthur Brennan emerged from the tree line below his weathered face and deliberate movements, marking him as someone who understood mountain survival at a fundamental level. At 68, the retired Army Ranger had become Cassidy's closest neighbor and reluctant mentor, though he lived nearly 4 miles away down a treacherous mountain path that most people couldn't navigate in daylight, let alone in pre-dawn darkness. Art's silver hair caught the early light as he climbed the final stretch to her porch, his breathing steady despite the altitude and steep ascent. The pronounced limp in his left leg told stories of shrapnel from Desert Storm, that doctors had never fully removed old wounds that ached in cold weather, but never slowed him down when it mattered. "Coffee's still hot if you want some," Cassidy called down to him, her voice carrying easily in the thin mountain air. Art climbed the final stretch, his ramrod posture maintained despite the limp that marked 3 decades of carrying metal fragments in his leg. "Figured you'd be up. Heard helicopters about an hour ago heading northeast toward Devil's Backbone Valley." Cassidy's posture straightened slightly, old instincts responding to information that might indicate military activity in her territory. Military birds, multiple aircraft flying low and fast through weather that should have grounded anything without urgent operational requirements. Art accepted the mug of coffee she handed him, wrapping his calloused fingers around the ceramic warmth. Unusual flight pattern for a training exercise. Navy birds sounded like, moving fast. The two sat in comfortable silence, watching the snow accumulate on the pine branches below. Art had never asked about Cassidy's military service beyond what she'd volunteered, and she'd never pressed him for details about the missions that had left him with a pronounced limp and old shrapnel scars that set off metal detectors at airports. Their friendship had developed through mutual respect for privacy and shared understanding of what it meant to carry invisible wounds from service most people couldn't comprehend. "You ever miss it?" Art asked, eventually nodding toward the Barrett rifle that remained perpetually within Cassidy's reach. Cassidy considered the question while studying the distant peaks where those helicopters had disappeared. I miss the certainty, she said finally. Knowing exactly what your mission was, what success looked like, who you could trust to have your back. She paused, her gray-green eyes fixed on mountains that had become both prison and sanctuary over 3 years of exile. But not the politics, especially not the politics when the mission parameters change after you're already committed. When the intelligence turns out to be fabricated. When your own command structure becomes the enemy. Art understood without requiring additional explanation. He'd seen enough military politics during his own service to recognize how good soldiers could be sacrificed to protect institutional interest. Desert Storm taught me the same lesson, Art said quietly. Command lies, soldiers die. I lost my entire platoon to friendly fire because someone up the chain made a mistake they couldn't admit. Covered it up, blamed equipment, failure forced me into early retirement when I wouldn't stay quiet. He took a long drink of coffee, the steam mixing with his breath in the cold air. Anger's useful fuel, but terrible navigation. Question is, are you running from something or towards something? Cassidy had been grappling with that question for 3 years. The disability payments from her military service were enough to maintain her isolated existence, but not enough to build any kind of meaningful future. She had skills that were valuable but highly specialized experience that was extensive but largely classified, and a reputation that made her unemployable in any field related to her military specialty. 3 years earlier, Gunnery Sergeant Cassidy Keller had been leading a reconnaissance team in a classified operation in Afghanistan that officially never happened. The intelligence had been perfect. The mission parameters clear, the tactical situation straightforward. Eliminate a high-value target who was coordinating arms shipments to terrorist organizations. One shot, one kill, mission complete. Except the target had been an undercover CIA asset whose identity had been deliberately concealed from military commanders. Cassidy's successful completion of her assigned mission had eliminated a key intelligence source and compromised an ongoing operation worth millions of dollars and countless lives. The subsequent investigation had painted her as a rogue operator who had exceeded her authority and ignored proper verification protocols. The truth buried beneath layers of classified documents and political maneuvering was that Cassidy had followed orders exactly as given by commanders who had been deliberately kept uninformed about CIA operations in the same area. She had become the perfect scapegoat for an intelligence failure that reached the highest levels of military and civilian leadership. Her discharge had been swift, quiet, and carried implications that made finding civilian employment in any related field virtually impossible. The Marine Corps she had served with distinction for 6 years had erased her existence as efficiently as she had once eliminated targets through a rifle scope. Before Cassidy could respond to Art's question about her direction, the satellite phone inside her cabin began ringing with a distinctive tone reserved for emergency contacts. She had given that number to exactly 3 people. Art, her former team medic who had remained loyal despite her disgrace, and Colonel Rebecca Hartwell, her former commanding officer, who had been forced to sign Cassidy's discharge papers while privately acknowledging the injustice of the situation. Cassidy rose quickly, coffee mug abandoned on the porch railing. She grabbed the phone from its charging station near the kitchen window, recognizing the area code that meant military communication routed through encrypted channels. Keller? Cassidy, this is Rebecca Hartwell. The voice carried strain that immediately put Cassidy on high alert. I need you to listen carefully. There's a situation developing in your area that requires immediate assistance from someone with your specific skill set. Cassidy felt her pulse increase, old instincts responding to the tone that meant operational urgency. What kind of situation? Navy SEAL team conducting classified operations in Devil's Backbone Valley. They walked into what appears to be a coordinated ambush by a large force of well-equipped hostiles. Current intelligence suggests they're facing over 150 fighters with heavy weapons, organized positions, and extensive knowledge of the terrain. The implications hit Cassidy immediately. A SEAL team wouldn't be caught in that kind of trap unless they had been specifically set up, which meant intelligence failure, communication compromise, or outright betrayal, the same kind of factors that had destroyed her own military career 3 years earlier. How many SEALs, she asked, already calculating tactical possibilities based on terrain she knew intimately from 3 years of solitary exploration. 24 operators. They established defensive positions in an abandoned mining complex, but they're surrounded and taking heavy casualties. Weather conditions prevent air support or extraction until dawn, which is still 6 hours away. Cassidy closed her eyes, visualizing the terrain around Devil's Backbone Valley. She had hiked every trail, climbed every ridge, and mapped every tactical advantage in that area during her 3 years of self-imposed exile. The abandoned mining complex Colonel Hartwell mentioned was a death trap if someone controlled the surrounding high ground situated in a natural bowl formation that offered commanding views from every elevated position. But it also created opportunities for a skilled sniper operating from positions that most people would consider impossible to reach. What about other assets in the area? Cassidy asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Every qualified sniper within 300 miles is either deployed overseas, killed in the initial ambush, or pinned down with the main force. The nearest reinforcements are 12 hours away, minimum. Hartwell's voice took on a quality that Cassidy recognized as personal appeal, cutting through professional protocol. Cassidy, these men are going to die unless someone with your capabilities can provide immediate assistance. Through the kitchen window, Cassidy could see Art watching her with patient attention, understanding that important conversations often determine the course of lives. The Barrett rifle on the porch seemed to catch the early morning light differently, as if responding to the possibility that its long period of inactivity might be ending. "Colonel, you know my current status," Cassidy said carefully. "If I engage hostile forces, I'll be operating without official sanction, military support, or legal protection. If something goes wrong, Cassidy, 24 American servicemen are going to die in the next few hours unless someone intervenes. I can't order you to act, but I can tell you that you're the only person in the region with the skills and equipment necessary to make a difference." Cassidy looked out at the mountains where she had spent 3 years hiding from a world that had betrayed her trust and destroyed her career. Those same mountains now contained Navy SEALs who were facing death because of the same kind of intelligence failures and political maneuvering that had cost her everything she had once valued. The choice seemed clear, even though the consequences remained unpredictable. "Send me the tactical situation and grid coordinates," Cassidy said, her voice taking on the professional tone that had been dormant for 3 years. "I'll need current intelligence on enemy positions, weather forecasts, and communication protocols for contact with the SEAL team." Cassidy, Colonel Hartwell's voice carried a mixture of relief and concern. "This is completely voluntary. No one will question your decision if you choose not to get involved." Cassidy walked to the porch where Art waited with patient understanding, his own experiences with institutional betrayal reflected in eyes that had seen too many warriors sacrificed to political expediency. The Barrett rifle seemed to be waiting as well, like a faithful partner, ready to resume a relationship that had been interrupted by circumstances beyond either of their control. "Colonel, send the intelligence package. I'll establish overwatch positions and begin target assessment within the hour." As she ended the call, Art stood and moved to the porch railing, his gaze fixed on the distant peaks where American servicemen were fighting for their lives against overwhelming odds. "Guess that answers your question about what direction you're headed," he said quietly. Cassidy began calculating equipment loads, route planning, and tactical considerations that would determine whether 24 SEALs lived or died before sunset. For the first time in 3 years, she felt the clarity that came with having a mission that mattered more than her own survival. "I don't owe them anything," Cassidy said more to herself than to Art. "The system threw me away like garbage. But those men down there didn't betray me. They're warriors doing their jobs, probably based on the same kind of bad intelligence that destroyed my career." Art nodded slowly. "You sure about this? Once you engage, you're back in their world, back in the system that scapegoated you." "I'm not doing this for the system," Cassidy replied, her voice carrying the conviction of someone who had found purpose after 3 years of searching. "I'm doing it because those are American warriors who deserve better than being sacrificed to politics and intelligence failures." She turned to face Art directly, the morning light catching the determination in her gray-green eyes. "You taught me that we don't serve institutions. We serve the warriors beside us and the people who can't protect themselves. The system's always been rotten, but the mission can still be righteous." Art smiled with the satisfaction of a mentor who had provided wisdom during difficult transitions. Then let's get you ready. You're going to need every advantage you can get. Inside her cabin, Cassidy moved with mechanical precision through preparations she hadn't performed in 3 years. Each piece of equipment held specific purpose weight calculated against tactical value. The Barrett M82A1 received first attention, cleaning kit scope adjustment tools, and match-grade ammunition sorted into protective cases. The Barrett was a weapon system that demanded respect and expertise. Chambered in 50 caliber, it could deliver devastating kinetic energy at ranges exceeding 1,800 meters under optimal conditions. The Leupold Mark IV scope mounted on the rifle represented thousands of dollars of precision optics capable of resolving human-sized targets at distances that would seem impossible to civilian observers. Cassidy's hands moved through the cleaning process with practiced efficiency, muscle memory, overriding 3 years of civilian existence. She checked the barrel for any signs of corrosion, tested the trigger pull, and calibrated the scope using reference points she had established during her exile. Every mechanical component received attention because equipment failure at critical moments meant death, her own or the warriors, depending on her support. 47 rounds of Mech 211 Raufoss ammunition went into protective cases, each cartridge representing cutting-edge military technology. The armor-piercing incendiary rounds could defeat hardened targets in light vehicles, providing capabilities that exceeded standard ball ammunition. At nearly $5 per round, the ammunition represented significant investment, but Cassidy had maintained her stockpile specifically for situations that demanded maximum effectiveness. Art watched from the doorway as she assembled her tactical gear with methodical care. How much territory are we talking about? Devil's Backbone Valley covers roughly 12 square miles of granite cliffs, abandoned mining tunnels, and alpine forest. Cassidy replied, sliding ceramic trauma plates into her tactical vest. Multiple elevation changes, limited visibility. Perfect terrain for coordinated ambush tactics. Her hands moved through equipment selection without conscious thought, muscle memory from 6 years of active service taking over. Rangefinder for precise distance measurement, night vision scope for operations after sunset, climbing gear for accessing positions that required technical mountaineering, emergency medical supplies calculated for extended solo operations, water purification tablets, high-energy rations designed for cold weather operations. The total pack weight approached 63 pounds, carefully distributed to maintain mobility, while providing everything necessary for 12 to 16 hours of independent operations in hostile territory. Every ounce served specific purpose because unnecessary weight meant reduced mobility and increased fatigue at altitude. The satellite phone buzzed with incoming data transmission. Cassidy connected her ruggedized tablet, downloading classified intelligence that painted a tactical picture worse than Colonel Hartwell's initial assessment had suggested. 24 Navy SEALs from SEAL Team 5 had infiltrated Devil's Backbone Valley, targeting Victor the Scorpion Castellanos, an international arms dealer whose organization supplied advanced weaponry to terrorist networks across 3 continents. Intelligence indicated Castellanos was conducting a major transaction involving stolen military hardware worth approximately $40 million. The operation had been planned as a standard capture or eliminate mission. SEAL teams would establish overwatch positions, identify high-value targets, and either extract Castellanos alive or eliminate him if extraction proved impossible. Simple, straightforward, executed successfully dozens of times by similar units in similar circumstances. But Victor Castellanos had earned his reputation through 15 years of surviving military and law enforcement attempts to neutralize his operations. The intelligence package revealed a man who possessed intimate knowledge of American special operations tactics, having served as a military contractor in Iraq and Afghanistan before transitioning to illegal arms dealing. His organization included former Special Forces operators from multiple nations, creating a force capable of matching American tactical capabilities. Art provided additional context from his own sources, old military intelligence contacts, who still shared information through channels that existed outside official protocols. Castellanos isn't just an arms dealer, Art said, reading from notes he'd taken during encrypted phone conversations. He worked with CIA during the Iran-Contra operations back in the 80s, ran weapons to anti-communist groups in Nicaragua and El Salvador. Took all that training and those contacts into the private sector when the Cold War ended. The historical connection added troubling dimension to the tactical situation. Castellanos wasn't random criminal who had stumbled into weapons trafficking. He was intelligence asset gone rogue, someone who understood American operational procedures because he had once been part of the system. My contacts say someone in government has been protecting him for decades, Art continued. High-level officials who used him for off-books operations they couldn't run through official channels. That's how he survived this long when other arms dealers got taken down. Cassidy felt cold recognition settling in her chest. The same pattern that had destroyed her career at Firebase Kilo, bad intelligence protecting powerful people operators, sent into situations where the real mission parameters were hidden from them, scapegoats prepared in advance when operations went wrong. So these SEALs walked into a trap, Cassidy said, studying satellite imagery that showed the abandoned Copper Creek mining complex where the SEALs had established defensive positions. Someone wanted Castellanos eliminated before he could become a political liability, but they couldn't risk official operation that might expose the people who protected him all these years. That would be my assessment, Art agreed. And if the SEALs get wiped out, it's tragic loss during routine counterterrorism operation. No investigation into who sent them, what intelligence they were given, or why they didn't have proper support. The tactical display showed the mining complex situated in a natural bowl formation surrounded by elevated positions that offered commanding views of every approach and escape route. Three main buildings connected by covered walkways, surrounded by equipment yards and waste piles that provided some concealment but limited mobility. Perfect killing ground if someone controlled the high ground. Perfect place to eliminate evidence of officially sanctioned operations that had gone wrong. Cassidy made decisions that violated every instinct for self-preservation, but honored commitments that transcended personal safety. I'm going to save those men, and then I'm going to make sure people know the truth about what happened here. Art nodded with grim satisfaction. Then we'd better make sure you survive long enough to do both. What's your approach plan? Cassidy spread topographical maps across her kitchen table, overlaying satellite imagery with hand-drawn annotations from 3 years of mountain exploration. 3-hour approach across treacherous terrain to reach effective firing positions. I'll establish primary overwatch here. She indicated a granite outcropping designated Eagle's Perch on her personal maps, approximately 1,800 meters from the mining complex. Clear sight lines, concealed approach, multiple egress routes if I'm compromised. Weather's going to be a factor, Art observed, checking current meteorological data on his tablet. Storm front moving in from the northwest. Visibility dropping, wind speeds increasing. That's going to complicate long-range precision shooting. But it also provides concealment for my movement and makes enemy counter-sniper operations more difficult. Cassidy countered. Professional snipers learn to exploit environmental factors that hinder others. Turn obstacles into tactical advantages through superior preparation and adaptability. Art studied her approach routes with the practiced eye of someone who had conducted similar operations in different terrain decades earlier. You're going to be completely exposed during the final approach to Eagle's Perch. No cover technical climbing required. Anyone watching that ridgeline will spot you. Which is why I'm approaching from the northwest through the cave system. Cassidy indicated a series of natural tunnels she had discovered and mapped during solo explorations. Emerges 500 meters from the overlook with concealed approach through boulder fields. Takes longer but keeps me invisible until I'm in position. She checked her watch, calculating time and distance against the tactical timeline. SEALs can hold their positions for maybe 2 to 3 hours with current ammunition supplies. I need to reach effective firing range within 90 minutes to make a difference. Art helped her load equipment into the tactical pack, distributing weight according to principles learned through decades of mountain operations. You taught yourself patience up here during 3 years of exile. Now use it to save lives. Don't rush shots, don't reveal your position unnecessarily, and remember that the best sniper is the one who completes the mission and survives to fight again. Cassidy shouldered the 63-pound pack, feeling the familiar weight settle across her shoulders and hips. The Barrett rifle hung from a tactical sling that kept it secure during climbing while allowing rapid deployment when needed. If this goes wrong, she began. It won't, Art interrupted with absolute conviction. You're the best mountain sniper I've ever known, and I've known quite a few. Those SEALs are getting the guardian angel they deserve. even if they don't know it yet. He gripped her shoulder with calloused hand that had steadied countless warriors before combat operations. You're not doing this to prove anything to the system that betrayed you. You're doing it because you're still the Marine you always were, even without the uniform. That matters more than any rank or official recognition. Cassidy stepped into the February cold breath, immediately visible in air that carried the sharp bite of incoming weather. Visibility was already deteriorating as snow clouds moved down from higher elevations, which would complicate both her movement and target identification once she reached the valley. But she had spent 3 years learning every rock formation, every cave system, every concealed passage within 10 miles of Devil's Backbone Valley. Local knowledge represented her primary tactical advantage against professionally trained opponents who possessed superior numbers and equipment but lacked intimate familiarity with terrain that could kill the unprepared. The hike began with deceptive ease, following game trails through pine forests that provided concealment while maintaining reasonable pace. But Cassidy knew the terrain would become progressively more challenging as she approached the valley, requiring technical climbing skills and absolute focus on route selection. Behind her, the safety and isolation of 3 years disappeared into the mountain wilderness. Ahead waited a tactical challenge that would either prove her capabilities or provide the final chapter in a military career that had been interrupted by betrayal and political expedience. Cassidy checked her watch and calculated time remaining 2 hours and 40 minutes until she reached positions where her rifle could make a difference. The SEALs needed to survive that long. 6 miles northeast in Devil's Backbone Valley, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Razor Garrett pressed his back against the concrete wall of the mining complex's main building, listening to automatic weapons fire that had continued almost without interruption for the past 90 minutes. At 34, Garrett had led SEAL operations in 7 countries across 4 continents, but he had never faced a tactical situation that offered fewer viable options. 24 warriors pinned in a kill box, ammunition dwindling, and an enemy that seemed to predict every American tactical response before it happened. "Razor, this is Hammer." Chief Petty Officer Daniel Draven's voice came through Garrett's earpiece with the calm professionalism that marked veteran operators. "Alpha Team reports ammunition down to 60%. We've got wounded who need immediate medical attention." Through the shattered windows of the complex, Garrett could see muzzle flashes from at least 12 different elevated positions. The enemy had established interlocking fields of fire that made movement between buildings extremely hazardous while maintaining coordinated pressure that prevented effective counterfire. This wasn't random ambush. This was professional elimination operation designed to wipe out American special operations capability through superior positioning and overwhelming firepower. Someone had planned this specifically to kill SEALs. "Hammer, consolidate Alpha Team with Bravo in Building 2, Garrett ordered. "We need to reduce our defensive perimeter before they overrun individual positions." The tactical radio crackled with transmission from Firebase Echo, their supporting base of operations 40 miles southeast. "Viper 7, this is Echo Base. Situation report." Garrett grabbed the handset, knowing his response would likely be the last official communication these men would send. "Echo Base Viper 7. We are surrounded and heavily engaged by superior enemy forces. Estimated 150-plus hostiles with heavy weapons and coordinated tactics, requesting immediate air support and extraction." The response came with mechanical efficiency that failed to account for human desperation. "Viper 7 negative on immediate air support. Weather conditions prevent flight operations until dawn. You are on your own until morning." Dawn was still 5 hours away. Garrett looked around the room at men who had survived operations in some of the world's most dangerous locations, warriors who had never faced odds this impossible. They were running out of ammunition. Their wounded needed medical evacuation that wouldn't arrive for hours, and their defensive positions were being systematically eliminated by an enemy that seemed to anticipate every tactical decision they made. 24 American warriors were facing death in a forgotten valley because someone had sent them into a trap with incomplete intelligence and insufficient support. The same kind of institutional failure that had destroyed careers and ended lives throughout military history. But Garrett refused to accept elimination without fighting for every possible advantage. "All teams prepare for coordinated movement to secondary positions. We consolidate our defense and make every round count. Nobody gets left behind." In the mountains above Cassidy, Keller moved through treacherous terrain toward positions where her rifle might provide the only chance these men had of surviving the next hour. The ghost of Firebase Kilo was returning to the fight. Cassidy's boots found purchase on ice-covered granite as she navigated a near-vertical section of ridgeline that most climbers would consider impassable in daylight, let alone during a snowstorm. Each handhold required testing before committing her full weight, while the Barrett rifle's additional bulk shifted her center of gravity in ways that demanded constant adjustment. One mistake would send her tumbling 300 feet down a rocky slope that offered no chance of survival. The temperature had dropped 15 degrees in the past hour, turning her breath into frozen crystals that clung to her tactical face mask. Visibility deteriorated with each passing minute as the storm intensified, but Cassidy pressed forward using navigation skills learned during survival training that few Marines ever experienced. She had memorized this route during countless solo hiking expeditions, never imagining those peaceful explorations would become life-death reconnaissance for a combat mission. Her portable radio crackled with fragmentary transmissions from the valley below. American voices, strained and desperate, reporting ammunition counts that grew smaller with each update. The professional calm that marked experienced operators was beginning to crack under pressure that exceeded anything in their training or operational experience. Bravo team, we need covering fire for casualty evacuation. The voice belonged to someone young, probably mid-20s, speaking with the controlled panic of a warrior facing his first encounter with mortality. Cassidy increased her pace, ignoring the burning sensation in her lungs as thin mountain air challenged her cardiovascular system. Each step brought her closer to positions where her rifle could influence the engagement, but those same steps represented time that the trapped SEALs might not possess. The cave system emerged from the mountainside like a dark mouth barely visible through swirling snow. Cassidy had discovered this passage 18 months earlier during a solo climbing expedition, mapping its interior with the same attention to detail she had once applied to military reconnaissance. The tunnels extended 43 feet into the mountain, providing thermal concealment while maintaining a narrow sightline to the valley below through natural fissures in the rock formation. She moved through darkness using memory and touched the Barrett rifle held carefully to avoid striking stone walls that could damage precision optics. The passage narrowed in places, requiring her to remove the tactical pack and push it ahead while crawling through spaces barely wide enough for human transit. Professional endurance developed through years of mountain survival training pushed physical capabilities beyond normal limitations when tactical circumstances demanded extraordinary performance. Behind her, granite formations muffled sound, while providing thermal concealment from detection equipment that relied on heat signatures rather than visual observation. But movement through restricted spaces required time she might not possess as professional hunters established blocking positions that would eliminate escape possibilities. Cassidy emerged from the cave system 500 meters from Eagle's Perch Overlook, exactly where her planning had predicted. The boulder field ahead provided concealment while allowing careful advancement toward positions where her rifle could reach the mining complex 1,800 meters distant. She keyed her radio for transmission on encrypted frequencies. Control, this is Viper. Approaching Overwatch positions. Request current intelligence on enemy disposition. Colonel Rebecca Hartwell's voice carried strain that suggested the situation had deteriorated since their last communication. Viper SEAL team reports multiple casualties and ammunition critically low. Enemy forces appear to be coordinating from elevated positions around the entire complex. Cassidy studied the valley through her spotting scope, identifying muzzle flashes and tactical positions that revealed enemy deployment patterns. Professional observation confirmed her worst suspicions. This wasn't random resistance, but coordinated defense executed by personnel with military training comparable to American Special Operations Forces. The mining complex sat in the natural bowl exactly as intelligence had indicated, with 3 main buildings surrounded by equipment yards that offered minimal cover. But the surrounding ridgelines bristled with fighting positions that commanded every approach and escape route. Whoever had planned this ambush understood American tactical doctrine at a fundamental level. Control, I'm observing approximately 20 separate firing positions, all elevated, all with clear sight lines to American positions. This is going to require sequential target elimination from multiple locations to avoid counter-sniper fire. Hartwell's response reflected desperate professionalism. Understood, Viper. SEAL team commander estimates 30 minutes before their position becomes untenable. 30 minutes to eliminate enough threats to change the tactical balance in favor of 24 trapped Americans. Cassidy had achieved difficult shots under challenging conditions throughout her career, but never with time constraints that meant failure would result in the systematic execution of an entire SEAL team. She established position at Eagle's Perch, her body forming perfect alignment behind the Barrett M82A1 as muscle memory overrode 3 years of civilian existence. The overlook provided commanding view of the valley while offering concealment through natural rock formations that broke up her silhouette against the skyline. Wind velocity measured 12 miles per hour from the northwest, requiring compensation calculations that had become instinctive during her 8 years as a Marine Scout sniper. Through her scope, the mining complex appeared as a tactical chessboard where American warriors were being systematically eliminated by an enemy that controlled every advantage. Her breathing slowed to the controlled rhythm that preceded precision shots at extreme range. Heart rate decreased as combat focus eliminated all awareness except the crosshair's target and mathematical relationship between bullet trajectory and terminal ballistics. The familiar weight of the rifle felt like greeting an old partner after an unwanted separation. Range to primary target, 1,847 meters. Atmospheric conditions challenging, but manageable. Wind compensation 3/4 value left. Target assessment, enemy machine gunner Ridge Alpha currently engaging American forces with devastating effect. Cassidy's finger found the trigger with gentle pressure that had been perfected through thousands of practice rounds and dozens of confirmed kills in 7 countries. The mathematics were complex, but the execution had to be flawless. One shot to announce her presence and change the tactical equation. Miss in her position would be compromised without achieving any tactical advantage. In the mining complex below, Lieutenant Commander Garrett raised his hand to signal the coordinated breakout attempt that represented their only remaining chance of survival. Around him, 17 remaining SEALs prepared for movement that would expose them to coordinated fire from multiple directions. The wounded would be carried equipment, would be abandoned, and survival would depend on speed, surprise, and the desperate courage of warriors who had never learned how to surrender. On my mark, Garrett whispered into his tactical radio. Alpha team breaks north toward the equipment yard. Bravo team provides covering fire, then follows 30 seconds behind. Charlie team maintains overwatch until both elements reach secondary positions. Chief Petty Officer Daniel Draven positioned Bravo team to provide suppressive fire while maintaining observation of approaches that could bring reinforcement from scattered defensive positions throughout the mining complex. At 36, Draven had served with SEAL teams for 14 years, participating in operations that officially never happened in countries the Pentagon preferred not to acknowledge publicly. Razor, those machine gun positions are going to chew us apart the moment we break cover, Draven observed with calm assessment that marked someone who understood that professional evaluation of hopeless situations was preferable to false optimism. Garrett nodded, knowing Draven's tactical analysis was accurate but irrelevant. Remaining in current positions guaranteed slow elimination as ammunition supplies reached zero. Movement offered minimal chance of success, but minimal was preferable to none. Above the complex, Cassidy's crosshairs settled on the enemy machine gunner, who had been systematically suppressing American attempts to establish effective return fire. Professional observation revealed disciplined fire control, coordinated communication with other positions, and tactical knowledge that marked former military training. This wasn't random resistance. It was coordinated elimination of American special operations capabilities by personnel with equivalent professional expertise. Time slowed as Cassidy's finger applied final pressure to the trigger. 3 years of exile, disgrace, and self-doubt focused into a single moment that would determine whether 24 Americans lived or died in the next hour. The Barrett rifle's report echoed across Devil's Backbone Valley like thunder, the .50 caliber round traversing nearly 2 kilometers of mountain air before finding its target with terminal precision that ended the machine gun's devastating effectiveness instantly. Through her scope, Cassidy observed the immediate tactical impact. Enemy communications increased in volume and urgency as professional fighters responded to unexpected threat from an impossible direction. Muzzle flashes shifted orientation as multiple positions attempted to locate and eliminate the sniper who had just changed the fundamental equation of their carefully orchestrated trap. "Control this is Viper," Cassidy transmitted, while rapidly changing position to avoid counter-sniper fire. "First target eliminated. SEAL team should execute movement now, while enemy forces are adjusting to new threat parameters." In the mining complex, Garrett had witnessed the impossible shot that eliminated their most dangerous immediate threat. Professional warriors didn't believe in miracles, but they recognized tactical opportunities when superior firepower provided temporary advantage. "All teams execute breakout now," Garrett commanded, rising from cover and leading Alpha Team toward the equipment yard in a desperate sprint that exposed them to fire from multiple directions. Chief Draven coordinated, covering fire from Bravo Team, his M4 rifle engaging enemy positions with suppressive fire designed to disrupt aim rather than achieve specific kills. The professional calm that marked veteran operators maintained tactical effectiveness despite circumstances that would paralyze civilians. "Bravo Team covering fire on Ridgeline Charlie," Draven shouted over the deafening noise of coordinated weapons discharge. "Keep their heads down until Alpha reaches secondary positions." Petty Officer Second Class Jake Ramirez shouldered through the pain of shrapnel wounds that Petty Officer First Class Lucas Morrison had been struggling to treat with limited medical supplies. At 27, Ramirez understood that movement meant agony, but remaining stationary meant death for teammates who refused to abandon wounded personnel. Behind them, Morrison and Petty Officer Third Class Ian Thorne carried wounded SEAL, whose traumatic injuries required immediate surgical attention that wouldn't be available until they reached medical facilities hours away. The 23-year-old Thorne was the newest member of SEAL Team 5 selected for this mission based on exceptional marksmanship scores and demonstrated ability to maintain composure under extreme stress. "Freshkin, you get eyes on the machine gun position at 10 o'clock. Garrett's voice carried authority that demanded immediate response. Thorne eased his rifle around a concrete pillar, using his scope to scan enemy positions that seemed to multiply with each observation. "I count 3 separate firing positions, all elevated, all with overlapping fields of fire. They've got us completely zeroed." The tactical implications were devastating. The enemy had established what military strategists called a kill zone, an area where every piece of cover could be engaged simultaneously from multiple directions. Moving between buildings meant exposure to coordinated fire that guaranteed casualties. Remaining in current positions meant slow elimination as ammunition supplies dwindled. Cassidy observed the coordinated movement through her scope while calculating her next target priority. The SEAL breakout had created temporary tactical confusion among enemy forces, but professional fighters would adapt quickly. Her intervention had provided opportunity, not victory. Additional precision fire would be required to maintain the advantage long enough for American forces to reach defensible positions. Target selection required instant tactical assessment. Ridgeline Bravo held sniper positions that could eliminate the moving SEALs with precision fire. Building elimination took priority over personnel elimination when time constraints demanded maximum tactical impact with minimum ammunition expenditure. Range to secondary target 2,134 meters. Wind compensation increasing due to storm intensification. Target type structural support for enemy observation platform. The mathematics pushed equipment capabilities to their limits, requiring absolute precision in environmental calculation and bullet placement. The second shot from Cassidy's Barrett rifle eliminated the wooden platform that had provided elevated firing position for enemy snipers, sending 2 hostile personnel tumbling 40 feet down a rocky slope while temporarily disrupting coordinated fire from that direction. Secondary damage to the platform structure created additional confusion as remaining enemy forces attempted to understand the source and nature of the threat. Captain Nikolai Volkov monitored the tactical situation from his command position with growing concern that approached professional alarm. At 46, the former Marine Force recon officer had spent 18 months planning this operation, studying SEAL team tactics and identifying weaknesses that could be exploited by well-prepared defensive forces. 2 precision shots from impossible range, each eliminating key tactical positions, suggested the presence of an expert marksman operating from concealed positions that his reconnaissance hadn't identified. Professional concern reflected planning that hadn't anticipated intervention by personnel who weren't supposed to exist in this operational area. His intelligence had accounted for every available American military asset within 300 miles. The sniper engaging his forces represented an unknown variable that could compromise the entire operation. Professional adaptation required immediate changes to tactical disposition. All positions report status and maintain fire discipline, Volkov commanded through his tactical radio. We have sniper contact from elevated position bearing unknown. Adjust defensive postures accordingly. The professional concern in Volkov's voice reflected decades of experience conducting operations where unknown variables could transform tactical success into catastrophic failure. His organization included former military personnel from 6 countries, each selected for specific capabilities that complemented American tactical weaknesses. But superior positioning and numerical advantages meant nothing if an invisible marksman could eliminate key personnel with impunity from ranges that exceeded his force's capability to respond effectively. Position 5 reports sniper elimination of Overwatch platform, came the voice of one squad leader. Precision fire from extreme range. Professional execution. This is not random civilian interference. Volkov's tactical display showed SEAL team movement towards secondary positions, while his own forces struggled to maintain coordinated fire under harassment from an invisible marksman whose capabilities matched or exceeded his own personnel. The tactical mathematics that had guaranteed American elimination were shifting in favor of the trapped forces. All sniper teams locate and eliminate hostile marksmen immediately. This is priority target, all other missions secondary. But Cassidy had already vacated her first firing position, moving through terrain that offered concealment while maintaining observation of the tactical situation below. Professional sniper doctrine emphasized mobility after engagement, never firing multiple shots from the same location when facing competent opposition capable of coordinated counterfire. The SEALs reached the equipment yard, establishing temporary positions among overturned mining equipment and waste piles that provided improved cover compared to their previous locations. The breakout had cost them additional casualties, but consolidated defensive positions offered better chance of survival than scattered resistance across multiple buildings. Unknown friendly sniper, this is SEAL Team 5. Garrett transmitted on emergency frequencies. Outstanding shooting. Can you provide continued support while we consolidate positions? Cassidy keyed her microphone while navigating rocky terrain toward her secondary firing location. SEAL 5, this is Viper, continuing overwatch and target engagement. Suggest you prepare for coordinated assault once enemy forces adapt to current tactical situation. There was a long pause before Garrett responded, his voice carrying recognition and something approaching awe. Viper, Gunnery Sergeant Cassidy Keller. Cassidy felt her chest tighten at hearing her name and former rank spoken by someone who knew the truth about Firebase Kilo. Formerly, now just a civilian providing assistance. Gunny, we know what really happened at Kilo, Garrett said, his voice reflecting the professional respect that transcended official narratives. You got a raw deal. We're grateful for your support. From his position in the equipment yard, young Thorne turned to Chief Draven with expression mixing disbelief and recognition. That's the Marine who took out a target at 2,800 meters in Afghanistan, the one they scapegoated for the CIA intelligence failure. Draven nodded grimly while maintaining observation of enemy positions through his rifle scope. And they threw her away like garbage when politicians needed someone to blame. Focus up fresh. We owe her our lives, which means we fight twice as hard to make sure her effort matters. The exchange reflected understanding among professional warriors that institutional betrayal didn't diminish individual capability or honor. Cassidy Keller had been destroyed by political maneuvering, but her skills and dedication remained intact despite 3 years of exile. Cassidy reached her secondary position, a cluster of boulders approximately 1,600 meters from the mining complex that offered different sightlines while providing concealment from enemy observation. The storm was intensifying beyond Weather Service predictions, creating whiteout conditions that challenged even thermal imaging equipment. But professional snipers learned to exploit environmental factors that hindered others, turning obstacles into tactical advantages through superior preparation and adaptability. Reduced visibility would hide her movement, but complicate target identification at the extreme ranges necessary to remain outside enemy response capabilities. Her third target presented complex challenges that pushed the boundaries of what was mathematically possible. Range 2,387 meters through swirling snow and crosswinds that varied by altitude and terrain features. The target, an enemy forward observer, directing coordinated fire against SEAL positions, occupied a rocky outcropping that offered minimal exposure and excellent concealment. Through her scope, Cassidy observed the observer's disciplined movement patterns as he coordinated multiple firing positions through tactical radio communications. Professional behavior marked former military training, probably European special forces based on equipment configuration and tactical methodology. Victor Castellanos had recruited serious personnel for this operation, not random mercenaries seeking easy money. "Control this as Viper," Cassidy transmitted, while calculating bullet drop compensation for extreme range engagement. Enemy forces are conducting coordinated fire direction from elevated observation posts. Eliminating forward observers should disrupt their tactical coordination significantly. Colonel Hartwell's response carried strain that suggested the situation extended beyond the immediate engagement. Viper B advised that intercepted communications indicate enemy forces have additional personnel en route to your location. This may be larger operation than initial intelligence suggested. The implications crystallized in Cassidy's tactical assessment. Victor Castellanos hadn't established a temporary arms-dealing transaction in Devil's Backbone Valley. He had created a permanent operational base designed to conduct ongoing illegal activities while maintaining capability to eliminate American military interference. The SEAL team hadn't walked into an ambush. They had discovered a strategic threat that required immediate neutralization before it could be used to conduct operations against American interests. Her breathing slowed to the controlled rhythm that had been perfected through thousands of practice rounds and combat engagements that demanded precision under conditions where tactical mistakes guaranteed permanent consequences. Mathematical calculations accounted for every variable that could affect bullet trajectory over extreme range through adverse environmental conditions. The Barrett rifle's discharge echoed through the valley as the .50 caliber round traversed over 2 kilometers of turbulent mountain air before eliminating the forward observer whose coordination had been directing devastating fire against American positions. The immediate tactical confusion among enemy forces confirmed successful target elimination. SEAL 5, this is Viper. Forward observer eliminated. Enemy coordination should be disrupted for several minutes while they establish alternate command structure. Garrett's response reflected professional gratitude. "Outstanding work, Viper. Can you provide continued support while we attempt to improve our tactical position?" Affirmative, SEAL 5, but be advised that enemy forces are adapting quickly to sniper harassment. Window of opportunity may be limited. Volkov's concern had escalated to tactical alarm as he processed fragmentary radio transmissions from his scattered forces. 3 precision eliminations from extreme range had disrupted carefully coordinated fire plans that had required weeks of preparation and reconnaissance. The unknown sniper possessed capabilities that matched his best personnel while operating from positions that remained undetected despite concentrated counter-sniper efforts. "Position 2, do you have visual contact with hostile marksmen?" Volkov demanded through encrypted communications. "Negative, Overwatch. Intensive observation of probable firing locations reveals nothing. Professional concealment and mobility." Position 4 maintains overwatch of eastern approaches, but has observed no muzzle flash or movement indicating sniper location. Reported another team leader. Volkov's tactical assessment suggested the hostile sniper possessed mountain warfare experience that exceeded his personnel's capabilities in this specific operational environment. Professional adaptation required immediate changes to tactical disposition that accounted for ongoing harassment from an invisible enemy whose effectiveness had already changed the fundamental equation of their carefully planned operation. All sniper teams expand search parameters to include extreme range positions beyond 2 kilometers. This operator possesses professional capabilities and will continue mobile operations to avoid counterfire. But Cassidy had already relocated to tertiary positions that offered concealment while maintaining observation of tactical developments below. The game of cat and mouse would continue as long as she could maintain mobility and avoid detection by professional opposition capable of coordinated counter-sniper operations. Her 4th target required even greater precision as enemy forces adapted their positioning to minimize exposure while maintaining coordinated pressure against American positions. Target selection demanded tactical assessment that prioritized maximum impact with minimum ammunition expenditure, since resupply remained impossible, and every round had to contribute to SEAL team survival. Through her scope, Cassidy identified ammunition resupply personnel moving between enemy positions under cover they believed provided concealment from ground-level observation. But elevated positioning offered sight lines that revealed movement patterns invisible to personnel operating at valley floor level. Range 1,923 meters. Target enemy logistics coordinator carrying ammunition boxes that would sustain continued engagement against American forces. Elimination would create supply problems that might force enemy tactical adjustment, favoring SEAL team survival. The fourth shot from Cassidy's Barrett rifle eliminated key resupply personnel while destroying ammunition boxes that contained ordnance necessary for sustained operations against entrenched American forces. Secondary explosions from eliminated ammunition created tactical confusion among nearby enemy positions while reducing their capability to maintain coordinated fire. In the equipment yard, SEAL team personnel observed the distant explosions with professional appreciation for tactical support that exceeded anything in their operational experience. Unknown personnel operating from concealed positions providing precision fire that was systematically changing tactical balance in favor of American survival. "That woman is saving our lives," Chief Draven observed to Garrett while coordinating defensive positions that could be maintained with available ammunition supplies. Garrett nodded, though his expression reflected concern about tactical dependence on support that remained beyond his control or direct coordination. Professional warriors preferred tactical situations where success depended on their own capabilities rather than external factors that might be eliminated without warning. But current circumstances offered limited options for tactical independence. SEAL Team 5 required continued sniper support to survive the next hour, regardless of broader strategic concerns about operational autonomy. Above them, Cassidy observed enemy forces adapting to her harassment through tactical adjustments that would require corresponding changes to her own operational methodology. Professional opponents learning from contact, improving their defensive posture, beginning coordinated counter-sniper operations designed to locate and eliminate her capabilities. The tactical situation was evolving rapidly as both sides adapted to changing circumstances that neither had anticipated when the engagement began. But Cassidy understood that her greatest advantage remained intimate knowledge of terrain that she had spent 3 years exploring during exile that had seemed purposeless at the time. Every cave system, every concealed passage, every tactical position within 5 miles of Devil's Backbone Valley existed in her memory, with the clarity that came from solitary exploration driven by need for purpose during years when the world had abandoned her. That knowledge would determine whether she survived the professional hunters who were now systematically searching for the ghost who had disrupted their carefully planned elimination of American special operations capability. The mountain warfare had become deeply personal, a duel between professional warriors whose training demanded absolute commitment to mission completion, regardless of personal cost or tactical complexity. The Russian moved through the mountain terrain with the patience of a predator who understood that haste created mistakes. Alexei Sokolov had eliminated 17 Western snipers across 4 war zones by recognizing patterns that less experienced hunters missed. The American sniper harassing Volkov's operation possessed exceptional skill, but skill alone wouldn't save her from systematic pursuit by someone who had made killing invisible enemies his life's work. At 42, Sokolov carried the lean, weathered physique of someone who had spent decades operating in environments that destroyed lesser men. His ice-blue eyes scanned terrain features through advanced optics that revealed heat signatures invisible to standard observation equipment. The upgraded SVD Dragunov rifle in his hands represented 30 years of Soviet and Russian military engineering, modified with Western optics that combined the best of both worlds. He had been trained by instructors who fought in Afghanistan during the 1980s, men who understood mountain warfare at a level that exceeded anything American forces had experienced until their own Afghan campaigns decades later. Those instructors had taught him that mountains belonged to those who respected them and that patience defeated technology when properly applied over extended periods. "Overwatch this," is Blade Sokolov transmitted to Volkov's command position. Hostile sniper operating from positions within 2 to 3 kilometer range, using natural concealment and mobility to avoid counterfire. Professional execution suggests advanced military training and extensive local terrain knowledge. Volkov's response carried tactical urgency. "Continue systematic search, Blade. Use all available resources to locate and eliminate hostile marksmen immediately. But the American had already demonstrated understanding that professional counter-sniper operations required constant mobility. Sokolov's thermal imaging revealed dozens of potential hide sites within effective range of the mining complex, each offering concealment while maintaining sightlines necessary for precision shooting at extreme distances. The hunt would require methodical elimination of possibilities combined with psychological understanding of how snipers thought under pressure. Professional marksmen trapped in defensive positions face psychological pressure that accumulated with time, forcing tactical mistakes through desperation or impatience when patience represented their only advantage against superior numbers. Cassidy navigated through rocky terrain toward positions that offered continued observation while providing concealment from counter-sniper teams that were systematically searching elevated positions within effective firing range of the mining complex. Her tactical radio intercepted fragmentary enemy communications that revealed coordinated hunting parties equipped with thermal imaging and advanced optical equipment designed specifically to locate and eliminate hostile marksmen. The storm provided both concealment and challenge as visibility dropped below 50 meters, while wind speeds reached levels that made precision shooting extremely difficult even for expert marksmen. But Cassidy had spent 3 years learning every rock formation cave system and concealed position within 10 miles of Devil's Backbone Valley. Local knowledge represented her primary tactical advantage against professionally trained opponents who possessed superior numbers and equipment but lacked intimate familiarity with terrain that could hide human presence from advanced detection technology. Control this as Viper to Cassidy transmitted while establishing position in a natural cave system that offered concealment from thermal detection while maintaining sight lines to the valley below. Enemy forces are implementing coordinated counter-sniper operations. I'm observing multiple search teams with advanced equipment moving toward elevated positions. Colonel Hartwell's response carried urgency. Viper, be advised that satellite intelligence indicates additional enemy personnel approaching your location from the northeast. Estimated 20 to 30 additional hostiles with vehicle support. The tactical implications were devastating. Cassidy was already facing professional opposition that matched her capabilities while operating from familiar terrain. Additional enemy forces with vehicle mobility could establish blocking positions that would trap her in mountain terrain with limited escape routes. In the mining complex equipment yard, Chief Draven coordinated defensive positions while monitoring medical emergency that affected team morale and tactical effectiveness. Jake Ramirez had collapsed against a concrete support beam, his face pale with blood loss that accumulated despite Morrison's best efforts to control hemorrhaging from shrapnel wounds. "How's Ramirez holding up?" Draven asked, his voice carrying a concern that senior NCOs learned to mask but never eliminate when teammates faced life-threatening injuries. Morrison looked up from field dressing that was already saturated with blood. "He needs surgical intervention within 2 hours, Chief. I can keep him stable, but these injuries are beyond field treatment capabilities." Ramirez remained conscious but increasingly pale as blood loss accumulated despite Morrison's medical expertise. At 27, Ramirez had survived operations in 4 combat theaters, but mountain warfare against professional opponents represented challenges that exceeded previous experience in urban and desert environments. "Don't worry about me, Chief," Ramirez managed his voice steady despite obvious pain. "Just keep the team moving. I can still shoot if you need covering fire." Draven nodded with mixture of pride and concern that marked leaders who understood that warrior spirit could overcome physical limitations, but couldn't change medical reality. Ramirez's determination was admirable and tactically valuable, but his deteriorating condition would eventually require evacuation that might compromise the entire team's survival. Lieutenant Commander Garrett established communication with remaining squad leaders to assess tactical capabilities after their desperate movement to secondary positions. The breakout had cost them 2 more operators, bringing their effective strength down to 22 personnel with limited ammunition and mounting casualties. Alpha Team report status. Alpha operational with 14 personnel, ammunition approximately 50%, no additional casualties during movement. Current position provides improved cover but limited fields of fire. Bravo Team report. Bravo operational with 8 personnel. We lost Caldwell during the breakout. RPG took out his position while he was providing covering fire for wounded evacuation. Garrett closed his eyes briefly, processing the loss of another experienced operator whose tactical expertise and personal friendship couldn't be replaced by determination or superior equipment. Tony Caldwell had been the team's explosive specialist, a 30-year-old veteran whose knowledge of demolitions had saved lives during operations in 7 countries. But professional commanders didn't have time for grief during active combat operations. Tactical assessment required immediate attention to current capabilities rather than dwelling on irreplaceable losses that couldn't be changed through emotional responses. Outside the equipment yard, extraction helicopters remained grounded by weather conditions that challenged even experienced military pilots trained in tactical operations under adverse environmental circumstances. Dawn was still 4 hours away, and ammunition supplies continued diminishing with each engagement. Cassidy selected her 5th target through scope observations that revealed enemy tactical adjustments designed to counter her precision fire support. Professional opponents learning from contact, improving their defensive positioning, beginning coordinated movements that would complicate her target selection while reducing exposure to long-range elimination. Her new target presented complex challenges that pushed both equipment and operator capabilities to maximum limits. Range 2,156 meters through deteriorating visibility and crosswinds that varied by altitude. Target enemy communications specialists coordinating counter-sniper operations from position that offered minimal exposure during necessary radio transmissions. But elimination of communications personnel would disrupt coordination between hunting parties that were systematically searching elevated positions for her location. Professional sniper doctrine emphasized target selection based on tactical impact, rather than ease of engagement, accepting difficult shots when success would provide strategic advantages. Cassidy's breathing slowed to the controlled rhythm that had been perfected through thousands of practice rounds and dozens of combat engagements in 7 countries. Mathematical calculations accounted for every variable that could affect bullet trajectory over extreme range through adverse environmental conditions. Her finger found the trigger as crosshairs tracked minimal target exposure during radio transmission that lasted less than 3 seconds. Professional snipers learned that opportunity measured in heartbeats rather than minutes, requiring instant decision-making that couldn't accommodate hesitation or second-guessing when lives depended on precision execution. The Barrett rifle's report echoed through the valley as the 50 caliber round eliminated the communications specialist whose coordination had been directing systematic searches for her position. Through her scope, Cassidy observed immediate tactical confusion as multiple hunting parties lost their coordinated effectiveness without central command structure. But professional counter-snipers would adapt quickly to communication disruption, continuing individual searches based on tactical training and local initiative. Her advantage measured in minutes rather than hours, requiring immediate relocation to positions that offered continued tactical effectiveness while avoiding detection by opponents who possessed equivalent professional capabilities. SEAL 5, this is Viper. Communications specialist eliminated, but enemy counter-sniper teams are continuing systematic searches. Your window for tactical improvement may be limited. Garrett's response reflected desperate professionalism. Copy Viper. We're preparing for final defensive positions. Unknown, how long we can maintain current location with available ammunition supplies. Above the mining complex, Sokolov observed terrain features through advanced optical equipment while calculating probable sniper positions based on observed bullet trajectories and tactical considerations that mark professional marksman capabilities. The former Spetsnaz operator possessed extensive experience hunting Western military snipers in 3 conflict zones, developing methodologies that had proven successful against personnel with training equivalent to his current target. Overwatch, this is Blade. Hostile sniper operating from positions within 2 to 3 kilometer range, using natural concealment and mobility to avoid counterfire. Professional execution suggests advanced military training and extensive local terrain knowledge. Volkov's response carried tactical urgency. Continue systematic search, Blade. Use all available resources to locate and eliminate hostile marksmen immediately. But Cassidy had already reached alternate positions that offered continued observation while providing concealment from thermal detection and visual observation by hunting parties that were systematically searching obvious sniper positions throughout the elevated terrain surrounding Devil's Backbone Valley. Professional hide sites that had been prepared during 3 years of solitary mountain living, concealed locations that offered tactical advantages while remaining invisible to personnel unfamiliar with local terrain features and microclimates that could hide human presence from advanced detection equipment. Sokolov's methodical advancement brought him within 60 meters of the cave system Cassidy had occupied 15 minutes earlier. His thermal imaging detected residual heat signatures that confirmed recent human presence despite natural concealment that would fool standard detection methods. The Russian sniper smiled with grim satisfaction. The American was good, perhaps exceptional, but she had made the inevitable mistake that all snipers eventually made when operating alone against coordinated pursuit. She had established patterns that could be analyzed and predicted by someone with sufficient experience and patience. Target located in defensive position. Sokolov transmitted while adjusting his scope for precision, shot at range that demanded exceptional marksmanship under challenging environmental conditions. Eliminating hostile sniper immediately. His rifle discharged with precision that missed Cassidy's previous position by 18 inches, the bullet fragmenting against granite formations that showered the cave entrance with stone chips, while confirming that professional opposition had identified her tactical location through systematic hunting operations. Cassidy had already vacated the cave entrance, rolling away from the impact point while maintaining grip on her rifle. Professional movement, preserved equipment, and combat capability while avoiding follow-up shots that would eliminate her tactical effectiveness permanently. The chess match between professional marksmen had escalated to close quarters engagement, where superior positioning and split-second decision-making would determine survival. Cassidy's advantage of local terrain knowledge competed directly against Sokolov's superior tactical position and decades of experience hunting invisible enemies through mountain terrain. Viper is taking direct fire from professional counter-sniper. Cassidy transmitted to Garrett while seeking improved concealment among rock formations that offered protection while maintaining mobility options. Continuing support, but tactical situation is becoming untenable. Garrett's response reflected desperate professionalism. Understood, Viper. We're advancing on final objectives. Hold position if possible. But professional snipers understood that survival represented prerequisite for continued tactical effectiveness rather than secondary consideration to mission completion. Cassidy began tactical withdrawal toward alternate positions that offered concealment while maintaining observation of SEAL team operations that had achieved temporary success through coordinated assault against disrupted defensive positions. Sokolov advanced through rocky terrain while tracking movement indicators that revealed his target's displacement toward positions that offered concealment but limited escape routes. Professional hunting techniques forced targets into predetermined killing zones, where superior positioning eliminated tactical advantages through systematic application of coordinated pressure. The mountain battlefield had become personal duel between professional marksmen whose capabilities were matched while environmental factors created challenges that tested both equipment and operator expertise to maximum limits. Cassidy sprinted across exposed granite slopes as Sokolov's second shot shattered rock formations 12 inches from her left shoulder, stone fragments drawing blood from her cheek, while confirming that professional pursuit had closed to ranges where slight movement errors would prove fatal. Each footfall required absolute precision on ice-covered surfaces that offered no margin for stumbling, while carrying 60 pounds of equipment that shifted her balance with every step. The Russian sniper possessed geographical advantages that came from elevated positioning and systematic preparation. But Cassidy understood terrain features through 3 years of solitary exploration that revealed concealment opportunities invisible to external reconnaissance. Professional knowledge that could overcome superior positioning through utilization of natural features that appeared as solid rock to casual observation. Behind a massive boulder formation, Cassidy established hasty firing position while calculating engagement parameters for shot that would eliminate professional threat or confirm her own death through tactical miscalculation. Range 387 meters at steep upward angle through deteriorating visibility. Target exposure minimal lasting seconds during necessary movement between concealed positions. Professional marksmanship at close range demanded different techniques than extreme distance, shooting requiring instant target acquisition and precise shot placement without extended preparation time that long-range engagements permitted. Sokolov understood this tactical reality using rapid position changes that minimized exposure while closing distance for a conclusive engagement. His voice carried across the mountainside in accented English, professional respect, marking experienced operators who acknowledged opponent capabilities while maintaining absolute commitment to their elimination. Amerikanskaya, you have skill, but this mountain belongs to me now. Cassidy remained silent, understanding that professional snipers revealed positions through unnecessary communication while focusing concentration on mathematical calculations that would determine survival or death within the next 30 seconds. Her crosshairs tracked minimal movement indicators that suggested Sokolov's position among granite formations that provided concealment while offering sightlines to her location. The mathematics compressed into split-second decision-making that couldn't accommodate hesitation when professional opponents possessed equivalent capabilities. Below in Devil's Backbone Valley, Garrett led final assault element toward the administration building where enemy forces had established their last coordinated defensive position. Smoke from continuing secondary explosions provided concealment, while debris from demolished structures created tactical confusion that favored advancing American forces over defenders who had lost positional advantages. Alpha Team breached the main entrance, Garrett commanded while coordinating supporting fire from elements that had established overwatch positions among the rubble. Bravo Team maintains exterior security and prevents enemy reinforcement or escape. Petty Officer First Class Jackson Warren approached the reinforced steel door with demolition charges calculated for precise destruction that would eliminate barriers without causing structural collapse that could trap personnel inside target buildings. Professional expertise balanced tactical effectiveness against operational safety when circumstances required interior fighting in damaged structures. 30 seconds to breach, Warren announced while activating electronic timers that would coordinate explosive entry with covering fire from supporting elements. All personnel take cover and prepare for immediate assault following detonation. Chief Draven positioned Bravo Team to intercept enemy personnel attempting to escape through alternate exits while maintaining observation of approaches that could bring reinforcement from scattered defensive positions throughout the mining complex. Above the valley, Cassidy identified Sokolov's position through scope observation that revealed minimal exposure during his own target acquisition process. Professional counter-snipers. Understanding that mutual detection created tactical situation where superior marksmanship would determine survival with victory, measuring in millimeters of accuracy rather than overwhelming firepower. Range 402 meters upward, angle through swirling snow that complicated precision, shooting for both marksmen. Target exposure 2 seconds maximum during necessary sightline establishment. Environmental factors included crosswinds, reduced visibility, and elevated stress levels that could affect fine motor control, essential for precision shooting. Cassidy's breathing slowed to controlled rhythm, while her finger found trigger position that had become instinctive through thousands of practice repetitions and combat engagements where hesitation meant death. Mathematical calculations that accounted for every variable affecting terminal ballistics compressed into split-second decision-making that couldn't accommodate second-guessing when professional opponents possessed equivalent capabilities. Sokolov's crosshairs settled on Cassidy's position as both marksmen achieved target acquisition simultaneously, professional expertise creating tactical standoff where superior shooting would determine outcomes for broader engagement involving forces that had committed everything to operations offering victory or elimination. The Barrett rifle's discharge coincided with Sokolov's shot in thunderous exchange that sent projectiles across mountain terrain at velocities exceeding 2,800 feet per second. Professional marksmanship tested under conditions that challenged both equipment and operator capabilities to absolute limits of what was tactically possible. Cassidy's bullet found its target with precision that eliminated professional threat permanently, while Sokolov's shot missed by margins that measured survival in fractions of inches rather than tactical superiority. Professional engagement decided by millimeters of accuracy achieved through years of training and combat experience that separated expert marksmen from merely competent shooters. "Control this as Viper," Cassidy transmitted, while observing tactical results that confirmed enemy counter-sniper threat had been eliminated. Hostile marksmen neutralized, resuming Overwatch support for SEAL team operations. But enemy forces throughout Devil's Backbone Valley were adapting to American tactical success through coordinated defensive measures that concentrated remaining personnel around critical assets that represented primary objectives for continued resistance. Warren's demolition charges detonated with precision that eliminated the reinforced entrance without causing structural damage that would complicate interior movement. Controlled destruction provided tactical access while preserving building integrity necessary for systematic clearing operations against entrenched opposition. Breach complete, Warren announced, while smoke and debris cleared to reveal interior spaces that would require room-by-room advancement against defenders who possessed intimate knowledge of building layout and tactical positions that favored defensive operations. Garrett led Alpha Team through the destroyed entrance while coordinating movement that balanced speed against security, advancing through corridors that could conceal ambush positions or improvised explosive devices designed to eliminate assault forces. The administration building revealed itself as permanent command center rather than temporary transaction site. Sophisticated communication equipment lined walls connecting to networks that spanned 3 continents. Weapons storage systems contained ordnance that exceeded anything necessary for single arms deal. Planning tables held documents revealing operations that had been conducted over years rather than weeks. "Razor, you need to see this," Warren called from the communication center, where banks of encrypted radio equipment maintained connections with criminal networks spanning from Eastern Europe to Southeast Asia. This operation was funding insurgent activities in 7 countries simultaneously. But what Garrett discovered in the back office made his blood run cold. A wall covered with photographs spanning 4 decades. Victor Castellanos shaking hands with men in suits, some faces Garrett recognized from history books. CIA directors from the Reagan administration. Pentagon officials from 3 presidential administrations. Congressional committee chairmen whose names still appeared in current news. And in the center, a photograph dated 1987. A younger Castellanos in field gear standing beside American military advisors in what was clearly Central America. The back of the photo bore a handwritten notation, "Operation Condor, Nicaragua, supply run, authorized." "Razor, you need to see this," Warren called from an adjacent room, his voice carrying something beyond tactical urgency, something approaching horror. Garrett moved to where Warren stood before an open safe, pulling out file after file, operational records, financial transactions, communications logs, all bearing official CIA letterhead and classified stamps that should never exist outside secure government facilities. "This goes back to Iran-Contra." Warren said, his hands trembling slightly as he held documents that could topple governments. Castellanos wasn't just working with CIA. He was their primary arms conduit for off-books operations in Nicaragua, El Salvador, Honduras, and it never stopped. Garrett scanned the files with growing realization. Victor Castellanos hadn't gone rogue. He'd continued doing exactly what the U.S. government had trained him to do, only now he did it for profit while maintaining enough government connections to stay protected. "There are current operations listed here," Warren continued, his voice dropping to barely above whisper. "Syria, Ukraine, Yemen, all places where official U.S. policy says we're not running weapons. But these files show ongoing shipments, coordination protocols, payment schedules." A loose page fell from one file folder. Garrett picked it up and felt his stomach drop. It was a briefing document dated 3 weeks earlier, marked eyes only, executive level. The document outlined a problem Victor Castellanos had threatened to testify before a congressional oversight committee about decades of illegal arms operations. The solution proposed was clinical in its brutality. Eliminate asset before testimony scheduled. Recommend use of military operation to provide plausible deniability. Seal insertion with compromised intelligence. Would achieve objective while appearing as routine counterterrorism failure. Garrett read the paragraph 3 times each pass, making the betrayal more real. "They sent us here to die. We weren't supposed to capture Castellanos. We were supposed to eliminate him and get killed in the process." Plausible deniability. Warren repeated, the words bitter in his mouth. Dead seals can't contradict the official narrative. Thorne appeared in the doorway, his young face pale with understanding that exceeded his years. "Sir, this is the same thing that happened at Firebase Kilo. The same pattern. Bad intelligence operators sent in blind scapegoat, prepared when it goes wrong." Garrett keyed his radio to the encrypted frequency that connected him with Cassidy. Viper, this is Razor. We've discovered why this operation was set up the way it was. The people who sent us here wanted us eliminated along with the target. You saved our lives from our own government. There was a long pause before Cassidy responded, her voice carrying the weight of vindication earned through 3 years of exile. Now you understand Firebase Kilo Commander. Now you understand why they needed someone to blame. Welcome to the club nobody wants to join. Garrett looked at the files surrounding him, evidence of decades of betrayal conducted under the banner of national security. We're taking all of this, Viper. Every document, every file, every piece of evidence. This time the truth doesn't get buried. Outside, the sound of approaching helicopters grew louder. But now Garrett understood they weren't just extracting wounded warriors. They were extracting evidence that could expose institutional corruption reaching the highest levels of American government. The mission had changed from survival to something far more dangerous: accountability. In the administration building, Garrett discovered files that revealed connections extending beyond simple arms, dealing into decades of covert operations. Victor Castellanos had worked with CIA during Iran-Contra operations in the 1980s, conducting off-books missions that officially never happened. Those connections had protected him for 30 years while he built criminal empire that served governmental interests when convenient. The same pattern that had destroyed Cassidy's career at Firebase Kilo. Bad intelligence protecting powerful people. Operators sent into situations where real mission parameters were hidden. Scapegoats prepared when operations went wrong. Helicopters descended through weather conditions that remained challenging but manageable for experienced military pilots. Cassidy reached the extraction landing zone as aircraft touched down rotor wash, creating swirling snow that reduced visibility while professional aviation executed precision landing operations. Garrett approached Cassidy with expression reflecting professional gratitude mixed with recognition. Ma'am, I don't know the full story, but you saved 24 lives today. Cassidy extended her hand with professional courtesy. Former Gunnery Sergeant Cassidy Keller, call sign Viper. Garrett's recognition was immediate. The ghost of Firebase Kilo. Your reputation preceded you, Gunny. Outstanding work today. Professional acknowledgement transcended rank structure or official recognition, marking mutual respect between warriors whose capabilities had been tested under conditions that revealed true character and tactical expertise. As helicopters lifted off carrying wounded personnel and critical intelligence materials, Cassidy observed Devil's Backbone Valley, where 3 years of exile had ended through tactical contribution that redeemed professional reputation destroyed by political circumstances. 3 hours later at Cascade Ridge Medical Center, Dr. Diana Webb completed emergency surgery that stabilized Ramirez's condition. Your medics saved this man's life. Another 10 minutes and nothing could have helped him. Colonel Hartwell arrived for face-to-face conversation in private conference room. Your tactical performance has been documented for official recognition. The intelligence breakthrough you enabled will save countless civilian lives through prevention of planned terrorist attacks. She paused at expression, carrying personal acknowledgement. I was forced to sign your discharge papers 3 years ago. I knew it was injustice then. What you did today proves everything I believed about you. Hartwell outlined position with Joint Special Operations Task Force targeting international criminal networks. Mountain warfare expertise specifically needed. Civilian contractor status, operational autonomy, legal protections, competitive compensation. This won't erase Firebase Kilo, Hartwell said honestly, but it's a chance to continue serving on your terms. Cassidy returned to her cabin at sunset. Art joined her on the porch with coffee, comfortable silence between warriors who understood sacrifice and redemption. You going to take Hartwell's offer? Art asked eventually. Cassidy looked toward mountains that had been both prison and sanctuary. Part of me wants to stay here, keep the peace I've built. And the other part knows that 24 men are alive because I didn't stay hidden. Art smiled with mentor satisfaction. Whatever you choose, you've proven you're the warrior you always were. Don't let their betrayal steal that from you. Cassidy made her decision. She called Hartwell with conditions intelligence on government officials, exposed operational autonomy, guaranteed Art gets security clearances as consultant evidence goes public if betrayed again. Agreed. Welcome back, Gunny. Cassidy returned to her cabin at sunset, the weight of 73 minutes of combat gradually lifting from her shoulders. The Barrett rifle had been cleaned and secured, each component receiving the attention that precision equipment demanded. 7 confirmed eliminations, 24 lives saved, 1 career potentially reborn. Art was already on the porch when she arrived, 2 mugs of coffee steaming in the cold mountain air. He didn't ask questions, just handed her the mug and settled into the chair beside hers, with the comfortable silence of warriors who understood that some experiences required time before they became words. They watched the sunset paint the mountains in shades of amber and crimson, the same peaks that had been both prison and training ground for 3 years, the mountains that had witnessed her exile and her redemption. "You look different," Art said eventually, "lighter somehow, like you just set down weight you've been carrying too long." Cassidy considered this while studying the distant ridgelines where she had taken impossible shots that morning. "I proved something today. Not to the system, not to the people who betrayed me, to myself." "What did you prove?" "That they were wrong about me, that I'm still the Marine I always was, even without the uniform. That 3 years of exile didn't break what they couldn't destroy." She paused, gray-green eyes reflecting the fading light. "And that the mission can still be righteous, even when the system is rotten." Art nodded with the satisfaction of a mentor who had guided someone through darkness toward light. "Desert Storm taught me that lesson the hard way. Took me 30 years to stop being angry about it. You figured it out in 3. You helped with that." Cassidy turned to face him directly. "You showed me that we don't serve institutions. We serve the warriors beside us and the people who can't protect themselves. That mattered more than I can say." "So what happens now?" Art asked. "Hartwell's offer still on the table?" Cassidy had been wrestling with that question since leaving the medical center. Part of her wanted to stay in these mountains, maintain the peace she had fought so hard to build during 3 years of solitary existence. The cabin represented safety, isolation from a world that had betrayed her trust and destroyed her career. But another part understood that 24 men were alive because she had chosen to engage rather than hide. That the intelligence they had recovered that could prevent future betrayals of warriors who deserved better than being sacrificed to political expedience. "I'm going to take it," Cassidy said finally, "with conditions." Art's eyebrows rose slightly. "What kind of conditions?" "The intelligence we recovered gets exposed, at least some of it. The people who protected Castellanos for decades, who sent those SEALs into a trap, they don't get to bury this like they buried Firebase Kilo. That's going to make you enemies in high places." "I already have enemies in high places. Might as well earn them honestly." Cassidy smiled without humor. "And I want you involved. Security clearance, consultant status, whatever it takes. You've got contacts and experience that could prevent other operators from walking into traps." Art was quiet for a long moment, his weathered face thoughtful. "You sure about that? I'm 68 years old. My days of mountain operations are long past. I don't need you climbing mountains. I need your wisdom, your contacts, your ability to see through intelligence failures before they get warriors killed. That's worth more than any tactical capability. You're asking me to come out of retirement. I'm asking you to help me make sure their sacrifices mean something. That Firebase Kilo and Devil's Backbone Valley lead to changes that prevent the next betrayal." Art raised his coffee mug in a gesture that might have been salute or simply acknowledgement. "Then I'm in, on one condition of my own." "What's that?" "We make sure the story gets told right, not the official narrative that protects powerful people. The truth about warriors who served their country even when their country didn't serve them." Cassidy clinked her mug against his. "Deal." The satellite phone rang inside the cabin. Cassidy retrieved it, unsurprised to see Hartwell's number displayed. "Colonel." "Cassidy, I need your answer. The position is yours if you want it, but I need to know now. The intelligence your operation recovered is creating pressure from people who want it contained. I need someone I trust working this before it gets buried." Cassidy looked at Art, who nodded once. The mentor who had guided her through exile now agreeing to stand beside her as she returned to service. The choice suddenly felt inevitable, as if 3 years in the mountains had been preparation for this moment, rather than punishment for the past. "I'll take it, Colonel, with conditions we discussed. and I want Arthur Brennan brought in as consultant. His contacts and experience are assets this task force needs. Agreed on all counts. Welcome back, Gunny. Report to Joint Operations Center next Monday. We'll handle all the security clearances and paperwork before then. As Cassidy ended the call, Art stood and moved to the porch railing, his gaze fixed on the mountains that had been their shared refuge. You know this won't be easy. Going back into that world fighting against the people who betrayed you while still serving alongside others who might do the same. Nothing worth doing is easy, Cassidy replied. But it's the right thing. Those SEALs deserve better than being sacrificed to protect corrupt officials. Other warriors deserve better than what happened to me at Firebase Kilo. And if they betray you again, then this time I'll make sure the truth gets out before they can bury it. That's what the evidence clause in my contract is for. Art smiled with genuine pride. You've come a long way from the bitter exile who moved up here 3 years ago. I had a good teacher. They stood together on the porch as full darkness descended across the Montana mountains, two warriors who had been betrayed by the system, but refused to let that betrayal define them. The ghost of Firebase Kilo was returning to the fight not for redemption from those who had wronged her, but to prevent future warriors from suffering the same fate. The mountains had given Cassidy 3 years to heal, to learn to prepare for a moment she hadn't known was coming. Now those same mountains were releasing her back into a world that needed warriors willing to fight for truth even when the system demanded silence. 6 months later, the UH-60 Blackhawk helicopter cut through mountain air with the distinctive thump of rotor blades that had become Cassidy's new morning soundtrack. She sat in the crew chief's position, Barrett M82A1 secured beside her tactical gear, arranged with the meticulous precision that marked professionals who understood that equipment failures at critical moments meant death. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Garrett's voice came through her headset. Viper target area in sight. We'll need your overwatch on the northern ridge before we move in. Cassidy scanned the terrain through enhanced optics, identifying tactical positions with the automatic assessment that came from 6 months of continuous operations. Copy Razor, I see 3 probable firing positions, elevation advantage on the northeast approach. Moving to position now. Beside Garrett in the assault helicopter, Petty Officer 3rd Class Ian Thorne checked his equipment with the confidence of someone who had evolved from uncertain newcomer to experienced operator under Cassidy's mentorship. At 23, Thorne had participated in 6 operations since Devil's Backbone Valley, each one building tactical knowledge that formal training could never provide. Remember fresh, Cassidy said, using the call sign that Thorne had earned through baptism by fire. Fast is smooth, smooth is fast. Don't rush your shots. Every round has to count. Yes, Gunny. The helicopter descended toward a mountain valley in the Colorado Rockies, where intelligence indicated a Phoenix control cell was operating weapons storage and distribution center. The intelligence had come through Art's contacts' old military networks that existed outside official channels and provided information that conventional sources missed. Art's voice crackled through the tactical frequency from his position at Joint Operations Center 300 miles away. Viper, be advised that thermal imaging shows additional heat signatures approaching from the northwest. Possible reinforcements or escape attempt. Copy Control, adjusting overwatch position to cover northwestern approaches. The helicopter touched down in a clearing 400 meters from the target location. Cassidy moved with practiced efficiency, Barrett rifle deployed and ready within seconds of boots touching ground. The team moved into positions that had been rehearsed dozens of times, each operator knowing their role without requiring verbal communication. This was different from Devil's Backbone Valley. This time she wasn't operating alone, wasn't fighting to save warriors trapped by betrayal. This time she was part of a team working to dismantle the criminal networks that had corrupted American military operations for decades. Over 6 months they had conducted 12 operations, prevented 5 terrorist attacks that Phoenix Control had been coordinating, eliminated 2 network cells completely, arrested 17 high-value targets, whose testimony was providing evidence of government officials who had protected criminal operations for personal profit. The evidence Garrett's team had recovered from Devil's Backbone Valley had proven more valuable than anyone anticipated. Financial records, communication logs, operational protocols, spanning 40 years of illegal arms dealing, conducted under the protective umbrella of American intelligence agencies. 3 congressmen had resigned under threat of prosecution. Two retired CIA officials were facing federal charges. A serving Pentagon official was under investigation. The truth was coming out slowly and against fierce institutional resistance, but coming nonetheless. Cassidy settled into her overwatch position, scope revealing the target building with crystal clarity, despite distance and environmental factors. Razor, this is Viper. I have eyes on target. Count 6 hostile personnel, three on exterior security, 3 interior presumed. You're clear for approach. Garrett led his team forward with a professional calm that marked warriors who had been tested under impossible conditions and survived through superior training and absolute trust in teammates. Behind him, Jake Ramirez moved with renewed confidence, fully recovered from wounds that had nearly killed him 6 months earlier. The operation proceeded with mechanical precision, security neutralized through coordinated suppression, buildings secured within minutes, intelligence materials recovered before enemy forces could attempt destruction, 0 friendly casualties. Professional execution that represented what American special operations could achieve when warriors were supported rather than sacrificed, when missions served legitimate national security interests rather than protecting corrupt officials. As helicopters extracted the team with recovered intelligence, Cassidy observed the Colorado mountains with the same appreciation she held for her Montana refuge. Mountains had saved her, trained her, prepared her for a role she had never anticipated. The ghost of Firebase Kilo had become something more than legend or cautionary tale. She had become symbol of warriors who served despite betrayal, who fought for truth even when institutions demanded silence, who proved that honor existed independent of official recognition. Back at Joint Operations Center, Art reviewed the recovered intelligence with the satisfaction of someone who had spent decades watching warriors betrayed by the system now finally seeing accountability beginning to take hold. Good work today, Viper. Art transmitted as Cassidy's helicopter approached base. Phoenix Control is down to 1 confirmed cell. We're winning. Cassidy smiled, thinking about 3 years of exile that had seemed like ending, but had actually been preparation. We're making progress, Control, but the fight's not over until the last warrior betrayed by this system gets their story told. Then we've got work ahead of us. Good thing we're patient. The helicopter touched down as sunset painted the operations center in shades of amber and gold. Cassidy stepped onto the tarmac with Barrett rifle slung across her shoulder, surrounded by warriors who trusted her capabilities because they had been proven under conditions that revealed true character. She never returned to exile, but she never forgot the warriors the system betrayed, and she made sure their sacrifices meant something. The ghost of Firebase Kilo had returned not because the system redeemed her, but because she redeemed herself through service to warriors who deserve better than political sacrifice. Through every operation, every prevented attack, every corrupt official exposed, she honored the memory of what could have been lost in Devil's Backbone Valley. 24 lives saved, dozens of attacks prevented, 3 criminal networks eliminated, 14 mountain warfare specialists trained, and most importantly, a system beginning to acknowledge that warriors deserve truth even when truth threatened powerful people. The mission continued. The fight for accountability persisted, and Cassidy Keller stood at the center of it, no longer a ghost haunting the margins of military history, but a warrior proving that honor, duty, and service could survive even the most profound institutional betrayal. The mountains had given her exile. She had returned with redemption, earned through skill, courage, and absolute refusal to let betrayal define her identity. That was the story she wanted told. Not of victim broken by injustice, but of warrior who transformed betrayal into purpose, exile into preparation, disgrace into a platform for demanding accountability. The ghost of Firebase Kilo had returned, and she was just getting started.